Hi, my name is Lydia, and I'm the producer of the upcoming Healthcare Payment and Revenue Integrity West Congress, a one-of-a-kind event uniting payers and providers in addressing challenges along the claims continuum. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Stephanie Sjogren, the Director of Coding and Provider Reimbursement at Connecticare, who'll be giving a talk about establishing implant payment equity. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, how are you?
So my first question is, could you briefly highlight why there is a need for implant payment integrity and why this is going to be a whole separate session?
Implant payment integrity, we have a commitment, to have correct coding both on the provider side and on the payer side. So by implementing these different PI programs, and again, this one is for implants specifically, we have to use a widely recognized and transparent policy. So it's really important to have all the different clinical and statistical methodology that brings it all together. So payment integrity has to have priority, whether it's for the healthcare payer or it's at the providers. And to do that, prevents fraud and denials and including revenue leakage. And it helps lower the overall cost of healthcare.
And so as someone who's obviously, you've done this within your own organization, you've established implant payment integrity, what would you say are some of the key aspects that other people who are looking to do this should pay attention to?
Well, your contracts drive your reimbursement. So what we have to do on the payer side and on the provider side is make sure that our contracts align with the policies that we're publishing. So if our published policies don't, jive with our contracts, we're just going to cause provider abrasion as well as, we're not going to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to these policies. But when we receive claims that are things that are not implants, but they're just supplies, we have an opportunity to also educate those different facilities and things like that to say, hey, listen, did you know that this isn't really an implant? And you're billing us under the wrong revenue code, perhaps. And we have an opportunity to correct that claim and actually protect both the revenue streams for the payer and the provider. And again, it
Mhm.
all comes down to keeping the premiums low for the members.
Right. And so obviously this is a service, implant payment integrity specifically, that a lot of people choose to outsource and have a vendor kind of implement things around. So obviously you chose to do this in-house. What would you say is something that, or some things that other health plans looking to maybe insource this should consider, and when should people actually choose to maybe lend this out to a vendor instead of insourcing?
So there's different components that you can do when it comes to implants. The first thing that you can do is implement, something from a payment edit, so to speak, on your side. So if you create a very clear and concise policy with really good definitions of what's an implant, what's not an implant, it's going to be really easy to connect that to the coding that comes in and go ahead and deny it if it's not really an implant. On the back end, from a vendor perspective, you can look at where we have services that are maybe billed inappropriately with a charge amount that is really, really high. And that vendor might be able to help you look at invoices and say, okay, well, this particular CPT code or HCPCS code usually has a charge amount of X. We're seeing this charge amount of, Y and units that are kind of crazy. It could be a typo. It could be, just the charge amount they were trying to get some extra money because they were paid a percent of charges. So the vendors and the providers have to, and the payers need to work together to find a way to work and get the most influence on their providers to do the right thing.
Mhm. And I think you've highlighted quite a few times that a collaboration with the providers is quite important in this. And I'm
Yes.
assuming this is something that you've worked quite hard on to ensure that you collaborate with your providers in order to do this. Is this something that you think is quite necessary and important when establishing implant payment integrity?
Yeah, especially if you have contracts that pay for an implant separately from the rest of a facility charge. And the reason that you want to collaborate is because you don't want to blindside your providers or facilities, because if they feel like it's attack on them rather than just, again, a payment integrity, then they're going to push back instead of listening to the reasoning that you have. And one of the things that I try very important, I'll highlight in this thing, is how to have those conversations where you are both protecting the correct coding and the revenue stream that they have, that they have to have coming in to remain, open.
Mhm. And I mean, we obviously, as the event, try to kind of focus on this payer provider element of the entire claims continuum and of American healthcare in general. So,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say are some of the aspects of this upcoming event that you are particularly excited about?
Well, it's definitely the networking. I love when I go to a bunch of different conferences, for coding, or, now this one for payment integrity. So it's great when you have different folks from both the provider side and the payer side. And we want to hear, like, I want to hear, what are you winning at? What's your wins? What's your challenges? What is going well? What's not going well? What issues are you having? What can for me as a payer, what can I clarify? I worked on both the provider side in my previous employment, and now I'm on the payer side. So I understand both and I want to hear both.
And what would you say to someone who's considering attending, and they've attended other events in the past, but they're not sure about this one just yet? What would you say to them to convince them to come?
Well, again, I think it's important that you look at both sides, from a provider side and from a payer side. The payer side, we tend to be seen as villains when we're not. And I tell everybody that. I'm like, we're not the dark side. At the end of the day, especially that word payment integrity, it's a buzzword, but at the same time, all we're really trying to do is make sure that claims are paid fairly and accurately. And that's going to be on both the provider side and the payer side. We want to make sure that you guys know the right rules. And, from a payer side, we're looking at, the claim data that comes in, and we don't necessarily see everything. So it's important to have those conversations to say, well, we only see a picture of what's in front of us. Can you give us some color behind the scenes?
I mean, I really hope that a lot of people come along and listen to all of this. I think it's a very important thing to talk about, as you had mentioned. And I really hope that we can reiterate this message throughout our event. And actually, I'm very excited to meet you again in Vegas. I think it's going to be a
Yes.
great time. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing you in about a month's time in
Yeah,
Vegas.
it's coming up quick.
See you later.